Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And speaking of transformation, Atiye Bayman, one of the early women at Silicon Catalyst, has a very interesting and unique story to tell. Atiya, you became a physicist at a time when it was very rare for women to get into STEM education. Can you tell us how you got into it and how you've become an angel investor, advisor to companies today?
I was fascinated by physics at a very early age. The very first time my school teacher in middle school started demonstrating some of the physics principles, I was starstruck. I thought that if I learned physics and became a physicist, I would be able to explain everything that happened around me. Of course, that was very naive, but I stayed on that path to become a physicist. When people asked me what I was going to do with that, the only thing that was around me that I could relate to at the time was being a professor. I did my undergraduate with the goal of coming to the United States to do a PhD, to be a professor. When I was done at UC Santa Barbara with my PhD, I discovered Silicon Valley. I started using my physics background and education and the learning that the PhD program gave me, researching areas that are not known and being able to solve problems. I stayed on and became an engineer in Silicon Valley.
Physics is applied in so many domains. Why semiconductors? And that was fairly early in the history of semiconductors, right? When you got in?
Relatively early. I started working in Silicon Valley in 1982 at AMD. I did not know much about the semiconductor industry when I was in graduate school, but AMD came on campus and they did recruiting on campus. Then I started learning about what kind of work was being done in the semiconductor industry from a processing aspect. Found it to be interesting and realized that I could apply what I had learned. Silicon Valley was a very, and still is, a very exciting place to do good work.
You were at AMD pretty much in the very early days when I still remember, even in 1990 when I joined Intel, Intel and AMD were like head to head. And it was always hard because each one would be pushing, jockeying for market recognition, and it still happens. So, what was it like to be at AMD in those days? And how did you end up in startups over a period of time?
Being my first job in industry, it was a period of very fast learning for me. You know, coming from a university lab into essentially a production environment. In AMD, the R&D was being done in the production environment. So there was very fast learning for me about what it really takes to make products. It's not just about the research, it's also the application and the production. It was a very exciting environment. Many people were being hired out of school, very good colleagues to work with. In Silicon Valley, you could be driving and you would see names of brand new companies on billboards. So there was a lot of startups and new companies being formed. It was tremendous excitement. So that also taught me about the startup ideas. I never became a founder, but I did participate in startups. The exciting part about participating in a startup is you can have tremendous contributions very early on, and you can also bring your thoughts and ideas about not just about technology, but about how a company should operate. So you can have impact in what the companies look like.
Very true. Often we assume that all you need is good technology. Can you talk about that a little bit? What are the ingredients of a good startup company that make it successful above and beyond just the raw technology?
For a startup to succeed, it has to incorporate all aspects of being able to bring a product to market and also build a company. So probably at the heart of it is the team, but also the approach the team takes to thinking about the overall business, because technology by itself can't make the company successful. You need to have a good team. You need to have a good business plan. You need to have business development and a reach to customers. It all has to come together. And you also have to be very realistic about financing and be able to raise money, be able to manage a budget and make sure you don't run out of money before you make money. It has to be a well-working machine.
Yesterday, somebody came up to me and is a brilliant software developer engineer. And he was like, where do I get started? I mean, I have all these great ideas. Uh, where do I begin? And what do you tell people when somebody says, I want to get started, I have all these ideas?
The way to begin is to say, okay, I want to pursue this, and who do I want to pursue it with? So are you going to pursue it alone, or are you going to create a team? And then also to figure out the very first ingredients of how do you convince people? What do I have to demonstrate that I have the seed to start a company? It has to be a demonstrable idea, not just an idea. So you need to think about how do you demonstrate it, and then how do you create a team, and then start building from there a business plan, all the resources you need to be able to get the work started. It's not going to, of course, happen overnight. It's a lot of hard work and patience and perseverance. You have to stay with it. You can't get discouraged. You'll probably get a lot of no's. And how do you steer through them?
Tell us about how you got into Silicon Catalyst and what your journey has been like at this amazing incubator.
I got involved with Silicon Catalyst as an advisor first, and then joined as a partner a year and a half ago. I was introduced to Silicon Catalyst by Nick Kepler, and Nick and I know each other from AMD. AMD was first job for both of us. He first asked if I would help as an advisor, reviewing some of the applicants. And then I actually signed up as an advisor and participated in the selection process for a few years. When Silicon Catalyst initiated their push to incorporate more material companies into the portfolio, then I joined as a partner to help with that effort. It has been really rewarding for me to participate. There is really a lot of satisfaction that I get from supporting startups, because startups really is what makes this whole technology innovation engine working. Yes, there is a lot of new work that's being done in established companies, but startups bring disruptive solutions and help technology innovations grow.
You were one of the early people to get into semiconductor and in general technology startups among the women. Even today, the number of women who are in STEM is small, in engineering is small, and executives is even smaller, and startups is even smaller. Do you think that's going to continue, or what are the reasons, and what can be done differently to get more women, not just into the workforce, but into entrepreneurship?
Well, I will break it down. Maybe first address women in STEM. It is a slow process. A few years ago, I looked at the statistics of women in science and engineering fields, and the numbers have grown, but they are not at parity. And the numbers look even worse when you get into the work environment. Women do drop off. So women in management positions and executive positions, the growth is slow. The first startup that I joined was Synergy Semiconductor, and Synergy Semiconductor was formed by ex-AMD founders, and I knew pretty much all of them. They were familiar with my work, and the type of technology Synergy was developing needed my expertise. So I joined them. That was my opportunity to become an overall technologist, learn and participate in developing all of the aspects of processing that's needed for the device. In doing so, in a startup environment, you have to learn how to do many things that maybe you don't have the background for, or you didn't think you would be doing. So it creates very rapid learning in various aspects of company life. So that was a good opportunity for me. By the time I was done, I had worked on developing 3 generations of technology that gave me confidence as a technologist to move on. My next startup was joining a solar company. So that was a bit of a change. And I did that at a time when it wasn't so clear whether the solar technology would be taking off, and the particular technology we were working on, whether that would take off. But I knew about startup life by then, and I knew that I could contribute. I knew I could build a team to do the R&D. It became a very rewarding experience. Solar technology did take hold. That became a rewarding experience as well.
Could you tell us about what that was like when you became a part of startups as one of the few women? And what are the challenges women face in being parts of startups even today?
The first challenge actually is learning how to forget that you're a woman. Often you're the only woman in the room. And if you focus on the fact that you're a woman, you get distracted. But unfortunately, you will encounter situations where you feel, wait a minute, I'm being treated differently, and how do I deal with that? In my opinion, people in general hire those who are like them, who think like them, who behave like them. This is probably also true from an ethnic perspective as well. It's not just for gender. We need to embrace that actually, if you do hire people who think differently than you are and who do things differently than you are, you probably build a stronger team. That is slow coming, but it is coming. It's a slow process, and it has to be done fairly consciously. And I don't mean that by saying there should be quotas. I mean it in the sense that when you're trying to build a team, you need to think broadly and tell yourself that you want to bring people who will complement you as opposed to who will copy you.
When you got into the production manufacturing environment at AMD, the entire fabs, if I remember, were in Silicon Valley here. Today, a large part of the whole semiconductor manufacturing is in various parts of the world, in Asia and in Israel and many other places. What's the likelihood, given all the push to bring manufacturing back? What will it take to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the US? And is it necessary?
That's a difficult question to answer, or to look into the future, focusing on maybe on what the environment was like when there was manufacturing in Silicon Valley. I think it was very healthy to have that. To do manufacturing, you need a team of all talents, with people with very different backgrounds, and it creates a very rich, diverse environment. Losing that, the society loses some level of diversity with that. In the end, all of this is driven by business conditions. Is it necessary to bring manufacturing back to Silicon Valley? Probably not. Would it be nice? Would it be great? I think it would be great, but I'm not sure that it would be necessary. Is it necessary to bring production back into the United States? Well, recent political events have shown that maybe that is necessary.
What are the challenges that technology has posed, in your opinion, especially the new waves of technology? What should our relationship be with technology?
The technology has created challenges over the years. Maybe it appears as if it's accelerating right now because some things are moving very fast, like AI. But even before that, with the personal devices, the way we live has been changing. The very first thing that I can think about is the division between the work life and personal life, or working time versus personal. That is really blurred with personal devices and having access wherever you are to your work environment, the virtual work environment. That's one big change. There are negative aspects to that. And of course, there are positive aspects to we can do things faster. And sometimes doing things faster is good. That also has created the challenge with raising children with devices. Families have to bring their own rules about how children interact with technology and how they interact with social media. There are negative aspects of unfiltered information, both for adults but much more so for children. We hear many stories about children struggling with pressure from social media. One of the challenges is with aging population. The technology is changing very rapidly. Older people are having difficulty learning the new devices and technologies. Plus, they may end up losing some dexterity with the touch screens, etc. That's becoming a challenge. This is a first-hand observation that I'm talking about. They are withdrawing from some of the things they used to be able to do. For example, 90-plus-year-old person can renew their driver's license. But if they go buy a new car, where everything is electronic, they will not be able to figure out which button, where to touch on the screen to be able to duplicate the functions they used to do by mechanical things like shifting a gear or putting a key into the car to start it. This is big learning for a 90-year-old. Or be able to make an appointment in DMV. You can't make an appointment even by phone call anymore. You have to go online to make an appointment. These are big shifts. Similarly, to make a vaccine appointment, you have to do it online or show up in person and wait. Technology is leaving older people behind. We need to think about how to bridge that gap because there are many, many older people who are living by themselves. And now they are being cut off from some parts of their routine because they can't learn it anymore.
That's true. And it's the United States, most of Western Europe, and now Japan and China are also going to face that very soon with the aging population. And so it's kind of what you're saying, it's kind of created a digital divide
That's right.
as people are aging and are not necessarily keeping up with the newer ways of doing the day-to-day life processes. Do you think there's a need for new technologies that can help people be conversant with technology, or is there a gap that cannot be bridged?
I think that if there is specific effort being put into it, it could be bridged. You could make devices that are easier to use. So, for example, voice activation could help with some of that, or very simple gestures on touch screens can help, and technology can fill in the in-between instructions. It is possible, but specific effort needs to be made.
True. And there's some hope that maybe artificial intelligence can fill in some of these gaps. Not
Yes.
sure it's happening yet, or if there's maturity in AI or the trust that people can put in it. But
Yeah.
hopefully, it will fill in some of these gaps.
Yes. Maybe also wearable devices could incorporate some of the artificial intelligence, can act for you. I wear an Apple Watch. I had a fall. I was on a boat, and the boat made a very sudden move, and I fell. And my watch immediately asked me if I was okay and whether the emergency should be called. This is an example of helping an older person, but beyond that, it could be a reminder for medication.
Now, these technologies, these devices, your cars can even anticipate where things are getting worse, and therefore what remedial action needs to be taken so that we don't have to wait till things break down.
Artificial intelligence will probably bring additional challenges, both in school life. There will be splits whether, learning could incorporate generative AI or not. And when it does, how do you know what you have is correct or real? But I don't think we need to fear. I think we need to be very deliberate and thoughtful about how we use it. I don't mean just personally, but as a society and in companies. The companies have to have responsibility in how their technology is being used. And I know we've been struggling with that. We continue to struggle with it. Politics, of course, gets into the picture. It will continue to be so. There will be probably continued regulations at the government level to help manage the negative aspects. And then the last one is information security. That also has to be dealt with high priority. I don't really think that we have sufficient security, both in terms of hardware, but also software. Those are the main challenges that I see. There are probably more.
Speaking of all the things that are changing, it seems to be putting tremendous pressure on people getting into the workforce, also in mid-career, because the changes affect jobs, the kind of work we do, the way we work. What's your advice to people? How should people approach the whole job career market, and how can they be successful in such a rapidly changing environment?
It is a challenge. I don't necessarily think that it is a bigger challenge than over the years, because change has always been there. The best thing to do is to be open and to continue to learn. Being able to focus is important. While you're learning, you still need to be focused on your chosen job to be successful. You can't get distracted by all the goodies, all the candy in the basket. You can't be distracted by that. The learning that I'm talking about is deliberate learning as opposed to random, because, the other candy is tastier. Many options being open to young people can be distracting. How do you choose? I think the way to choose is with passion. What you're passionate about is what you have to pursue, and you have to focus on that.
In your career, you've been through many different roles, from early stage large companies to startups, and now in investments, advising. Which part of it would you say you enjoyed the most?
The most satisfaction I got was building an R&D team that worked really well. We were able to create good technology and get good results and make good products. I learned many things, and now I'm in a position to spread what I've learned. It's a different kind of satisfaction that I have now with the work at Silicon Catalyst.
I've been a part of Silicon Catalyst for just over 2 years, and it is amazing. I've learned more than what I've been able to give to people. So that's really satisfying as well. So, to everybody out there, I'm always looking for different perspectives, even divergent views, so we can piece together what the future is like. No one has a crystal ball, and there's so much to learn. The future is also very nuanced. So please come forward, talk about your stories, talk about what worked, what did not work, the challenges you had, because that's what makes us real people. And Atiye, thanks again for all your
Thank you.
contributions.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about my experiences.